For like decades, attacking tactics were always evolving, always getting smarter. But defense, it felt kind of stuck in the past, all about rigid blocks and fixed zones. Well, not anymore. There is a massive revolution going on, and we're going to explore how defending is changing from a static wall of bricks into something, well, something far more intelligent and alive. This quote just nails it, right? It's no longer about building a fortress. The new philosophy is all about creating this dynamic web that senses and reacts to everything that's happening across the entire pitch. It's a huge shift from just reacting to what's in front of you to intelligently anticipating what's about to happen. For the longest time, defense was kind of the neglected child of tactical innovation. But now it's transforming. It's going from a simple game of occupying space into what you could almost call a neural network of interactions. It's no longer about defending a zone on a tactics board. It's about defending the relationships between your teammates. So, at the very heart of this revolution, you find this really fascinating clash of ideas. And it really boils down to two completely different philosophies for how a team should organize itself when they don't have the ball. Is it better to defend space, or is it better to defend the connections between the players themselves? Okay, check this out. This table does a fantastic job of breaking down these two schools of thought. On the left, you've got positional defense. Think of it as a rigid grid system. And on the right, you've got relational defense, which is all about swarming the ball. Now, what I find really telling is that last row, XGA, which stands for expected goals against. It's a measure of how many goals a team should give up based on the chances they allow. The positional style, it's stable, it's predictable. But the relational style, it's much more volatile. That means it might give up a few easy chances, sure, but it can also create these impenetrable peaks where it's almost impossible for the other team to even get a shot off. And this slide just perfectly illustrates the different feel of the two systems. Positional defense, like you see with a team like Arsenal, it's a clockwork mechanism. It's precise, it's predictable, every single piece has its place. But then you watch a team that plays relational defense, like Fluminense, and it's like a living thing. It's chaotic, it's fluid, and it reacts as a collective. The moment a trap is sprung, you suddenly see 3 or 4 players just converge on the ball at once. And if you want to see just how deep this philosophical divide goes, get this. Look at what Coach Thiago Motta reportedly did. He took all the lines, all the cones, all the visual markers off his training pitch. Why? He wanted to force his players to stop thinking, okay, I'm 5 meters from the sideline, and start thinking, I'm 2 meters from my midfielder and I don't care where we are on the field. It's a total shift from spatial awareness to interpersonal awareness. So we've seen the rigid structure of zones and the chaotic swarm of relationships. But what if there's a third way? Something that blends the best of both? That's where this idea of functional defense comes in, viewing the entire team as a single intelligent organism. In this model, the team acts like a superorganism. Think about it like this. A trigger. Let's say the opponent's midfielder turns their back to the play. That isn't a cue for just one player to press. It's a cue for the entire system. All of a sudden, 3 or 4 players might swarm the ball, not because a coach yelled at them, but because the organism itself collectively sensed a moment of weakness. So how does this incredibly complex behavior happen without some central command? Well, it actually comes from some very simple local rules, a lot like a flock of birds or a school of fish. Each player is just following a few basic principles. Stick near your teammate, keep a certain distance, move with the group. And from those simple micro-decisions, this incredibly sophisticated collective intelligence just emerges across the whole pitch. And this isn't just some fascinating theory. The data on this is really compelling. Advanced AI models calculated something called expected possession value, which is basically the probability that a team will score from any given possession. And what they found is that teams using this functional defense reduced their opponent's scoring probability by a massive 18%. Now, in a game of razor-thin margins, an 18% swing isn't just big, it's absolutely enormous. That's the difference between a mid-table finish and actually challenging for a title. Okay, so let's take all these fascinating theories and see how they actually look on the pitch. We can break this new defensive playbook down into 3 key tactical innovations that are changing the game as we speak. These pillars are first, defending forwards, which completely flips the idea of a defensive line on its head. Second, there's defensive tilting, a really risky but powerful way to create a numbers advantage. And third, we've got a total reimagining of how a team protects itself even when it's attacking, which is known as rest defense. First up, defending forwards. Just take a look at this number. over 180. That's how many offsides Hansi Flick's Barcelona team provoked in just half a season. How'd they do it? By pushing their defensive line incredibly high, sometimes just 15 meters from the halfway line. The offside trap is no longer this passive rule. It's being used as an aggressive weapon to literally compress the opponent's playing area. Next is defensive tilting. This is where a team intentionally abandons the weak side of the field to create this massive overload right where the ball is. It's incredibly risky, for sure, but the payoff is that if you lose the ball, you're already in the perfect position to counterpress. But it demands just incredible intensity, and it's all governed by that famous 6-second rule. You win the ball back, or you get back into a compact shape in 6 seconds or less. But this brings up a really crucial question. How do you actually measure all of this? I mean, the most valuable defensive actions, like positioning yourself in a way that prevents a pass from ever even being attempted, are completely invisible to traditional stats like tackles and interceptions. Well, this is where the new age metrics come in. One of the most interesting is called decon. It doesn't count tackles. What it measures is the number of passing lanes a defender shuts down just with their intelligent movement and positioning. It's really the art of closing doors the attacker didn't even know they wanted to open yet. And this leads us to a key skill called shadow defending. So instead of marking the player or marking the zone, the modern defender is actually marking the potential path of the ball. They anticipate the pass and position themselves not where the attacker is, but where the passer thinks the attacker is going to be. It's this incredible psychological game of cutting off the intention before the action even happens. And for a perfect real-world example of this, look no further than William Saliba. In one huge match, analysts pointed out that he completely shut down his direct opponent for the entire game without making a single tackle. He didn't have to. His shadow defending was so perfect that the ball could never even reach its target in the first place. And what I find amazing is that data is now starting to capture cognitive skills. The scanning rate, basically how often a player turns their head to survey the field, is a key metric now. There's a famous story of one club that chose a slower defender over a much faster athlete simply because his scanning rate was 4 times higher. They recruited a defender radar, a player whose brain processes the game so fast that he sees a threat and plugs the gap before it can even fully appear. And this brings us to the ultimate goal of this whole defensive revolution. It's not just about stopping goals anymore. It's about something deeper. It's about stopping thought itself. Cognitive science gives us the key here. See, our brains have 2 modes. System 1 is fast, it's intuitive, it's almost automatic. It's how an elite attacker sees a killer pass in a split second. But System 2 is slow, it's analytical, and it's deliberate. The goal of a great modern defense is to overload an attacker's brain, forcing them out of that fast, intuitive System 1 and into the slow, clunky System 2. If you can make an attacker stop and think, you've already won that battle. And this quote just sums it all up so perfectly. The old measure of a great defender was the mud on their shorts from all the physical battles they'd won. The new measure? Clean shorts, but a headache from the sheer mental effort of constantly calculating angles, anticipating movements, and analyzing trajectories. So where does all this leave us? As defense evolves into this war of information and prediction and psychology, it forces us to consider a pretty fascinating possibility. Is the future of this beautiful game, which has been so long defined by physical brilliance, ultimately going to be decided not by what happens at a player's feet, but by what happens inside their head?